Good morning, good afternoon, or maybe even good evening, depending on where you are. My name is Timothy Jones. I am IT Help Desk staff at SUNY Buffalo State College and one of their IT trainers on campus. This morning we'll be covering remote desktop orientation. This is a kind of an introductory session. It covers some first-time setup as well as the look and feel of using your device during a remote desktop session. In the background of this, we'll kind of touch on a little bit of policy detail, but really this is a very basic introductory session. This is appropriate for all users and is good if you're kind of on the fast track to getting into using remote desktop with your campus computer and accessing it from your home computer. To very generally answer the question of how does remote desktop work, let's just give a general explanation. So you are using your home computer to access your campus computer through a very pretty much invisible automatic process. And the way that works is that the visuals and the sound from your campus computer are being sent to the screen on your home computer or wherever you're accessing this. And at the exact same time, all the inputs from your home computer, so this is you typing on your keyboard, using your mouse or clicking your mouse, and in some cases actual microphone input from your home computer are being sent to the campus computer. Both of these are happening simultaneously or as close to simultaneously as your connection will allow. And it gives a very convincing impression that you're sitting there using your campus computer wherever you happen to be accessing it from. Now, aside from giving you access to your work computer, what are some of the less obvious perks of remote desktop? The first of these is a level of data security. So remote desktop provides a safe, HIPAA-compliant way to access things like department share drives or secure systems like Banner Admin that normally require, due to data security policies, require you to physically be located on campus, whether that's through the campus hardline internet connection or through the campus secure Wi-Fi. This, because the way you're accessing the computer is in effect a video stream coming in, none of that data is actually being transmitted or shared anywhere outside of what you're looking at on display. It's not stored on your device. It's not stored on any servers along the way. So it avoids some of the problems you might have if, let's say, you were installing all the software and properly trying to work on your home computer on your work workflow. And secondly, it sidesteps some of the compatibility questions that you might have. Again, if you wanted to completely rebuild your work office and in a home environment, remote desktop lets you use everything from your Windows-based work computer regardless of your home computer type. You're not working about, oh, I have a Chromebook, or oh, I have a Mac and I'm not able to install or use the software that I would normally use on campus. And lastly, there's a certain level of flexibility you get by using remote desktop. Older and less powerful home computers normally have no issues at all running remote desktop, and they're often seeing almost the exact same performance at home that they would get at work, even if normally that would be totally impossible if their home device has an older processor or less memory, or the various things that would normally cause problems are very much less of a problem when you're operating through remote desktop. Now, when a user requests remote desktop access, our IT department does two things behind the scenes. The first is to remotely change the power settings on your campus computer, and the second is to add your personal network account to the remote desktop group on your campus computer. Again, this is one of those things that happens automatically. You don't need to remember this specifically, but there are two pretty important things that you can pull out of that. The first is that when we change that power setting on the campus computer, our goal is to keep that campus computer turned on at all times. So when you're actually in a remote session on your campus computer, it's important not to shut that computer down. It's perfectly fine to restart the device, to log in, log out, to lock the device. All of those are perfectly fine, but you never want to fully shut it down, because once it's shut down, obviously it's not there to be accessed. You would need to have someone on campus go in and basically physically turn it on before you could rejoin in your next session. And by nature of us adding your network account to the remote desktop group on the PC, it's not an additional password you're remembering to access this computer. It's your own network account. It's the same thing you use for half a dozen other logins on campus. And when you sign up for remote desktop access, your computer is not made any less secure than it was already. Your computer is always secure with this setup, And it's one of the reasons, again, at the policy level, that remote desktop is such an ideal solution for both users and for administration. Everyone has kind of a different set of devices and circumstances at home, so one of the questions we'll get all the time is basically, what devices can I use to access my campus computer? Officially, our campus supports Windows, Mac OS, and Chromebooks for the home devices that you're using to access your campus Windows device. And in addition to this, we've been trying to kind of expand this compatibility, and we've been able to add some Linux distributions as well. So there's kind of a wide range of devices that will let you access your campus computer without issue. In addition to this, there are mobile devices like iPads and Android tablets that can technically be used. We don't normally recommend them. A lot of that is just down to more or less the input options available for them make them a little bit trickier to use. Not everyone will have a Bluetooth keyboard and mouse to work with it. The touchscreen controls are maybe not, they don't work exactly like you might expect. So it takes a little more kind of training and orientation to get used to that. And that's kind of why we tend to steer users away from using those, even though they are available if you need them in a pinch. And lastly, something you always want to keep in mind is an internet connection is always required for using remote desktop. It, for the most part, doesn't matter how you are connecting, whether you're using home Wi-Fi, whether you're hardlining your connection in using Ethernet. Pretty much doesn't matter if you're using DSL, cable modem, or fiber optic. Any kind of modern internet should pretty much have you covered. But there is kind of a hidden advantage to this setup in that if, let's say you have bad internet at home, it tends to kind of cut in and out, or maybe worst case scenario, maybe there's a power outage on your home computer while you were remoted into your campus computer. That campus computer is totally unaffected by that. So you've lost that connection, but the computer is ready and waiting for you to come right back. You haven't lost any work. You haven't lost any progress. Next time you're able to reconnect, things will be exactly where you left them when that problem came up. There are a few things you'll want to keep in mind when you're still getting acquainted with remote desktop. The first of these is if you're remoting in from another campus computer, there's no setup other than entering your device name and your normal network login. So this can sometimes throw people off when they're basically starting off fresh because they'll be given remote desktop access and they'll test it while they're still at work on campus. So maybe they'll go to a coworker's computer and try and remote in from there, and it'll work immediately. But what they might find is later when they go home or when they're on another internet connection, they'll try exactly what just worked on campus, but they'll find it's not actually completing that connection. There's a one-time setup when you're using an outside internet connection or from an outside device that you do need to complete to be able to get set with the remote desktop access. The second of these is only Windows PCs on campus can be accessed using remote desktop. So that's kind of an unfortunate limitation of both technology and policy. But for example, if your normal workload on campus is done on Linux or is done on Mac OS, you'll probably want to try and find a way to transition as much of those materials as possible to another campus PC and request access to that. And lastly, this doesn't come up very often. It's not a common problem, but anytime you have a device replaced or re-imaged, it'll need to have its remote desktop profile added again by IT. This is one of those things that's handled automatically generally, but if you're in a situation where you previously had remote desktop access and after a device is replaced and you find it suddenly not working, that's almost definitely what's happened. It's a very simple thing to check and to fix if that's what it is. Feel free to get in touch with us to look into that if it does come up. And I guess we'll just end for this first part with some general reassurances. And the first is that all the IT help desk employees have experience with remote desktop. That's how we resolve the majority of our issues on campus every day. So always feel welcome contacting us for help. A lot of the little annoyances or things that seem like annoyances that maybe there's a workaround for, we've kind of lived through those already. So we're going to be a good resource for when you're still kind of getting to grips with things, or just if you have any questions in general, always feel comfortable contacting us. Secondly, remote desktop doesn't require a fast computer, and we kind of mentioned this earlier, but a home computer or laptop will almost always work perfectly for this. An added benefit of the way the setup works is, again, worst case scenario, let's assume your home computer is just absolutely rotten with viruses and malware. unless you're transferring actual files, you're not going to be adding any extra threat to your work computer. You're not going to be compromising the campus by accessing this way. Don't be afraid of that. Again, unless you're actually transferring files, it's nothing you'll need to worry about. And lastly, the most confusing sense users normally report when they're starting off with a remote desktop is just that it feels weird having their exact work computer screen show up right in their home. You know, they're sitting there at home with a blanket over their shoulder and their dog at the to the right of the chair, and they're seeing their exact work desktop, and all their programs, all their communication are set up exactly as you would expect. It can be a little weird just getting into your workflow. That changes pretty quickly. You will get that muscle memory working just as fast as it ever was, and your workflow will go very smoothly once you get over that feeling. But that's really, other than the setup, that's the weirdest thing you're going to be overcoming in this process. So moving on to the live demo section of this orientation session, we're going to show you how the first time to set up your remote desktop connection as though you were starting from a home computer running Windows 10, and how to remote into a campus computer also running Windows 10. So one of the nice things about the Windows environment is it's not an extra app that you have to download to use this. It's already on your computer. Even if you have an older computer, you could be using a Windows 7 or a Windows 8 computer, the same program will still be available. To pull it up the first time, you'll just want to move the mouse cursor down to your Start menu. Go ahead and click that, and that opens up the search bar, and we're going to start typing in Remote Desktop Connection. Now, it actually will probably already pull it up after the first two letters. I've only typed in R and E, so we've got our icon right here for the remote desktop connection. I'm going to click it once to open that up, and when you first arrive at it, it'll look almost exactly like this. It won't have a computer device name in yet, and you'll notice in the bottom left-hand corner, we've got this little icon to show options. To set up our gateway, which is a one-time setup, we'll want to click this here to expand. And we've now got some tabs up in the top. We started in the general one. We're going to want to move all the way over to the advanced tab on the far right hand side. I'm going to click that once, and it now has these options here. We want this connect from anywhere option. So this is what lets our home computer know how to dial into the campus network, to basically know where to look for your computer. So I'm going to move the cursor down, and we're going to click settings. And when you first get in here, the interface will look almost exactly like this. And we'll want to change a few of these. And these are in the written directions that you'll have as part of this training session, but let's go through them here anyway, so we have exactly everything in the right place. So we're going to click this second option to use these RD Gateway server settings. And this is basically telling the computer where to dial into the campus. So we're going to type in bscrd.buffalostate.edu. And the login method may default to allow me to select later. The one we want is to ask for password. That's going to let us type in our network credentials to access our work computer. By default, this bypass RD gateway server for local address will be checked. We want to uncheck that, so that'll be blank. And now we're going to move down to the bottom, and this use my RD gateway credentials for the remote computer, we want to check this one here. So that's exactly what it should look like here. We're going to click OK to lock those in. And now we're going to go back all the way to this left-hand tab for General. And other than putting our device name and our user account, that's all we need to do for that one-time setup. So in this case, I'm going to put in my campus computer's device name. And actually, I have it right there. And this will be blank when you start off, but for the username, it's not just your username if you're accessing this from off campus. So you want to type in BSC logon and then backslash. And after that, you'll just type in whatever your username is. Once you've done that, we can go down to the bottom and click connect. And the first time you connect, and actually unless you've saved your credentials, it'll ask you this each time, it will show you the gateway server that we put in earlier. It'll show you your device name, and it should show you your username, your network account username. If this isn't right, you can go down here to click more choices, and it'll give you the option to put in a different account. But in theory, if we typed it in right, it should show up there. So we're going to click in and type in our password. Hopefully I get this right on the first try. I'm going to click OK. All right, looks like I got that right. Now, something you may not see here that you might run into on your own end is it may ask you to basically, hey, do you want to continue? And you'll click accept for a credential. It's nothing unusual. It's just because the first time your device is making that handshake. But that being said, we're now connected to my campus computer. And you'll notice up at the top we have this blue indicator bar, and that lets us know we're in a remote desktop connection. That lets us know we're looking at a different computer than the one we're sitting in front of. It'll give you the device name here. Think of this like a window within a window. Even though it's full screen right now, we can actually click this little window icon here to not quite minimize it, but to show us that we're just looking at a window device here within a window device here. So that's our home computer, and this is our campus computer. So on the far right-hand side here, we've got the X button that'll let us end the session. Anytime you click this, it'll give you a warning to let you know that this will disconnect the session. We don't want to do that yet, so I'm going to cancel out of that. You're also able to minimize your remote desktop window. So that will reduce it down to, here we go, that shows us that we're on our home computer but looking at our campus computer. This little set of bars here is just like you would see on a cell phone tower. It lets you know your connection strength. That's based on your internet speed. And for the most part, as long as you're above 2 bars, you shouldn't notice anything unusual happening. The lock just indicates that it's a secure connection. That'll always be the case when you're connecting to the campus network. And this little pin on the far left-hand side, that lets you kind of toggle the connection bar. So normally it's defaulted to pinned in place. You're still able to kind of click and hold and then drag left and right if you need to the bar. Sometimes, for example, if you have, let's say, a web browser open, let's open a couple tabs. Let's say we want to get to this third tab here. The bar is unfortunately in the way, but we can just click and slide that over. Click that one. We can click and slide it over if we want to select this one. But regardless, you can also click this pin icon here, and that will actually let us make that bar disappear when we move the mouse away from it. That is something that I don't actually recommend when you're starting off, because it can be a little funny when you're not sure which desktop you're looking at. So it's kind of nice having this this north star of this connection bar is right there, showing you the device name of what you're remoted into. So I do recommend leaving that there when you're still getting used to it. That being said, everything on this computer is exactly as it should be set up if you were using it in person on campus. Potentially on campus, you had 2 or even 3 monitors set up. The remote desktop session will be smart enough to kind of reduce the display area down to the 1 display or the 2 displays you're using from home. So let's say you already had a couple windows open. Even if your Google Chrome or your Slack were on the 2nd or 3rd monitor, once you remote in, it'll know to reduce them down and bring them to this screen. So you shouldn't run into any headaches there. Otherwise, it'll look exactly the same. Like if we go into our file folder here, we'll be able to see all of our network drives are connected just fine, even though normally those are only accessible when you're physically on campus. We can close this window down. And you'll notice if you go to the start bar, and remember, this is the start menu on the campus computer that you're accessing. The profile option up here will give you all the normal options. You can lock or you can sign out. Signing out will also, when you're remoted in, will end your remote session. Lock will actually leave the session active, but will put the computer in a state where someone would need to re-enter a password to get back in. Now you'll notice down in the power settings here that you have an extra option. Normally you'll just see restart, shut down, and sleep. And one more time, you do not want to choose the shutdown when you're using a remote desktop. You basically never want to power down the computer, but it's just fine to restart. That won't cause any problems. You'll be able to reconnect a few minutes after the computer is restarted. But you also have this disconnect option. That will only show up when you are remoted into a computer. So that's something that, again, if let's say we have unpinned this status bar up here and that has disappeared. If you're honestly not sure if you're looking at your campus computer or your home computer, you can just go to the start menu, click on the power button here, and you'll see that disconnect icon. And I'm going to go ahead and click this and disconnect from our session. This brings us back to our home computer, And that's really all there is to it. And something I would recommend doing early on when you're starting off on your home computer, let's bring up that app one more time. So I'm going to click the Start menu to pull up the search function. I'm going to start typing in remote, and that'll show us a remote desktop connection. You can right-click here to pin the remote desktop connection app to your taskbar. So what that has done is it's added the icon down here, so at any point you can just click this and it'll bring up the app right here. And if you've already connected, it should keep your settings in here. You'll see my username here and my device name here. So all of our options here are already saved, so I'm going to go ahead and click connect one more time. It'll ask me for my network password, and it'll bring us right back to our computer. And it's left it just as we would have left it if we walked away in person. And actually, one of the nice perks is that let's say you have several different windows or apps going, and you want to end the remote desktop session, but you don't want to leave the computer available to anyone else, but you don't want to close the programs that you have open. So what you can do in this case is choose Start menu and go to Profile, and we're going to choose Lock. So we're still looking at our remote desktop computer. I'll repin this, but the computer is locked. So until we come back and actually sign in, all those programs are still sitting there in the background open with all the information we left in them. That can be convenient if you get kind of interrupted at home or pulled away at home and don't want to actually like shut everything down completely. So we can now click the X up here to end the session, and we're back on our home computer. But one more time, because we pinned this earlier, we can pull up that remote desktop app, choose connect, confirm our network password. Oop, I actually need to type it correctly. And when it brings us back to the computer, it will automatically log us back in, and we'll have these screens ready to go just as we had left them. And that's pretty much all you need to know. It's doing that one-time gateway setup, and then after that, it's just basically choosing that remote desktop app, and then choosing connect, and entering your network credentials. And that's all you need to know. Remote desktop computing is a lot less scary when I think you've had a chance to sit down and play with it yourself, because it is a little disconcerting at first when you're seeing what seems like the wrong screen on the wrong device. You know, you're seeing your work desktop environment even though you're sitting at home on a laptop. Maybe you're sitting in a coffee shop with your Chromebook. It kind of takes you out of the scene that you're used to seeing, but really once you get used to it, it can be the perfect environment for getting back into your workflow and being really productive even though you're not in the office. One more time, this is Timothy Jones, IT Help Desk staff and IT trainer for Buffalo State College. Thank you for your time. I hope this was helpful for you. If you have any questions or feedback, you can always contact the IT Help Desk either at 716-878-4357. One more time, that's 878-HELP. And you can also email us directly at ithelpdesk@buffalostate.edu.